This episode is brought to you by Groove Washer, the best record cleaners and protective sleeves for your vinyl collection. Ask for the Groove Washer from your local shop or go to groovewasher.com. Discount code VinylGuide10. And now, on with the show. Welcome to The Vinyl Guide, the podcast for record collectors and music nerds. Here's your host, the biggest record nerd of them all, Nate Goyer.
Oh, well, hey, everyone. It's Nate. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for downloading. Thanks for welcoming me into your ear holes. I'm back with episode 446. 446. Jeez. That's a lot of episodes. This week, we have on a guest I've been looking forward to having on for many years, and we finally made it happen. This week, we're talking to Jem of the band Dead and the record label We Empty Rooms. Now, We Empty Rooms is an Australian record label that creates and shares very heavy music, and the band Dead is their primary band. Jem is a leader or co-leader of both of those, label and band, and they develop this extraordinary record packaging, very ambitious box sets that are available in very limited numbers. You kind of got to be in the know. You got to be in the right place and the right time to be able to grab one of these very special pressings from Dead and We Empty Rooms. To give you an example, last year, Dead made a record titled The Laughing Shadow. And there was an exclusive 10 vinyl copies made specifically for the Vinyl Guide podcast, which were quietly distributed to some collectors and musicians that I very much admire. And more recently, Dead put out a 9-record box set titled Burn Us Clean. It's 9 7-inch singles, Dead on one side and another artist they enjoy on the other. Each of the 9 records comes in a special hand-silkscreened sleeve with different colors. There were 50 box sets made of these 9 singles, made in a special green swirl vinyl pressing, and they were all placed in this nice special wooden box. And to make it even more exclusive, 25 of those 50 copies came with an additional flexi-disc. So the numbers of Dead and We Empty Rooms are crazy limited, and the effort to make them is quite heroic. We discussed that in depth today with Jem. I was lucky enough to grab one of these gorgeous record sets of Burn Us Clean. It's never very far from me. I enjoy the music, and I'm in awe of the work that it took to get it there. It's admirable in every way possible. So today we talked to Jem about the Burn Us Clean project and many more ambitious releases he's been involved in, including Hard-Ons, Melvins, and more. I strongly suggest you go and follow their Bandcamp. That's where you get the jump on things. deadsounds.bandcamp.com. And if you see any record, any vinyl available, especially the limited ones, grab them quick because they tend to go up on Bandcamp rather randomly. So if you see one, grab one. Now, finally, got to let you know, there's an extended version of this interview on our Patreon page, patreon.com/vinylguide. Another 25 minutes of discussion of record manufacturing and more with Jem. And that's only for supporters of the podcast from Patreon. And being a supporter of the podcast, you will get access to high resolution and commercial-free experience as well. And of course, this week you get about 30% more Jem, more discussion, extended interviews, etc. Join us there, patreon.com/vinylguide. It's not too late. You could jump up there right now and start enjoying the benefits. All right. With that, let's speak to Jem about the extremely limited and ambitious vinyl of Dead and We Empty Rooms. Hola.
You got me?
I got you.
Oh, I can't tell you the Zoom anxiety I have every time. So,
have you had a bad Zoom experience? Is that what we're working from?
I've had many, and the internet here is not super reliable either. So there's always that added bonus. Yeah.
Let's talk records, man. I guess for those of you who are unaware, Jem here of Dead and the label We Empty Rooms, who makes very heavy music available often in very limited numbers and in creatively ambitious packaging. Is that a fair description?
It's a very, fair and succinct. Yeah. Well done. Yeah.
Well, mate, pretty much whenever there's something going up on We Empty Rooms or Dead's involved, I'm like, yep, I'll take one of those, please. Now, Jim, you seem to have these multiple skills that kind of uniquely lend themselves to what you're doing there with the band and with the label, music, screen printing. You seem to have an appetite for punishment. And all that seems to lend themselves very well to record manufacture. So which came first? Desire to make music or packaging? Like, what sparked this?
Oh, definitely the music. And it's also something I try to really, I don't even have to try. It is something that is always present no matter what we're doing, even if we're having ideas that are, around packaging that's fairly over the top, it's still always that the music is the first thing. And to that end, that's probably maybe stopped us from doing certain things that are like really, really based around the medium and not the music. Mm-hmm. Even though I love it sometimes when people do that stuff, and it's not to say that I wouldn't do it. Like I remember hearing about, I assume this is real, I never saw it, but the Mers car, like Mersbow made a car that, had an album jammed in the tape player, and it only played that album. And I do love stuff like that. But for me, it still always kind of starts with the music, and then everything around the art and the packaging is kind of more dictated by, how do we want to present it? And I just started very young. So I started playing, I was really lucky that I started playing regularly when I was about 12. Mm-hmm. Started playing really regularly with people who had just finished high school. So like perfect age that they were already accomplished musicians and had time. So while they were sort of doing the, not get your shit together and work properly thing, I was, wagging school and going and playing music. And then I started playing. I was lucky that I grew up in Melbourne where there's a lot of shows. So I was basically playing 2 nights a week from the age of 14. And again, probably at the expense of school and stuff. And that just meant that, I think I was 15 maybe when I released my first album. And a combination of being not aware of what the rules are, and also just when you're young, your time is so unvalued, like monetarily. So you think, oh shit, is that how much it costs to, print CD covers? Well, hang on, why don't we just print our own and spend the next, 6 months folding them up? And so do you know what I mean? And then more recently, I've started to kind of clock onto the idea that, look, having an idea is fun. Like it gives you some endorphins. And sometimes executing the idea is not so much fun. And then having finished it feels good. Right. So there's definitely things that I used to do that I probably don't so much anymore, or I limit it. Like I do now sort of start to break it down and think, no, do I want to hand stamp like 500 LP sleeves, or is that actually, if I add up how much time that takes, is it actually better just to put that energy into printing cooler covers or something like that? Do you know what I mean? Like,
some of the romance has gone out of some of the ultra mundane tasks.
Yeah, and it's not actually just the romance, it's more just the how much time that I have that I can spare, and also being aware of, again, like, because the music is the most important thing. I don't really want to find myself turning up to rehearsal underprepared because I just spent the whole day folding record sleeves or something, so it's like and so that's it's just always finding that balance. And I tend to feel these days like I like doing around 100 of anything. That's a nice number where it just feels like not, not burdensome, and just like, yep, whatever it may be, like printing 100 things or folding 100 things is like, yep, that didn't feel like it was starting to feel like work.
You could have line of sight to the end of something that's 100.
Yeah.
Like if you get to multiple hundreds, and I guess I haven't done this before. Well, it's been years since I've done it. After 300, it could just seem baffling once you start getting up in that range.
Yeah, and it's also finding the balance of like the first dead record. So the first run of them, it wasn't crazy over the top, but there's a fair bit of hand screen printed action in that cover. And as I started to sell them, I sort of realized, well, because that's the only version I did, I kind of can't price them as like a boutique record. So because I did all 200 that way, I've got to just price them as a normal record. And in a way, I did myself a disservice by, I sort of said to myself, why didn't I just make 50 like that and make the other 150 or whatever just a little less full on? So that's kind of what I did for the next dead record and the next. And then I, to a certain degree, sort of have generally done that from then on. Again, just coming back to, we know maybe 50 to 100 is a good number for us, that we're not busting a gut trying to sell them. Mm-hmm. But everyone that wants one can get one. It's not like a Melvin's release where it's like, oh shit, I pressed the wrong button on the keyboard and now it's gone. It's like, no, you've got time. Like, all you got to do is be on our mailing list and you'll get it,
So, for example, the Laughing Shadow, we'll jump right into the latest one, or the last one that I know of. That one, it had several different versions of 100. So you get like 500 pressed and then make 100 or 5 different variations on those.
Yeah, we tend to do a bit of that. I can't tell you how many different record pressing plants I've worked with. And with certain records, like, because people often hit me up and say, oh, who should we press our record with? And I go, well, hang on. That record that you said you liked, I organized the center labels with one place, the lacquers with another place, stampers with another, the pressing with another, and then for the covers, I used 3 or 4 different people to supply me with, paper. And so yeah, sometimes that means, yep, let's press around 500 and do different editions. Sometimes it means, well, the pressing plant is down the road, so we don't need to press 500 right away. Just, yeah, it really depends.
So even up to today, this Burn Us Clean record, which I'm very keen to jump into, 9 7-inch records. Were all of those pressed and mastered in the same process, or did you have one go one direction, the other go a different direction?
They all got manufactured in the one place, Zenith in Melbourne. Right. And they won't mind me saying this, because they at one point they sort of were going to say, they did say, hey, Jem, I think maybe you should press with someone else, because I have busted their balls, and they'll admit that. But I've busted their balls over, times where we've gone to press something that hasn't gone quite right. But to be fair to them, they have been really, really great at always looking at it, and they've been really, really upfront about, this is what we can do, and this is where we maybe would suggest, you press with someone else if that's your priority. And in that whole process, I narrowed down, for whatever reason, in their sort of workflow chain, their 7 inches are really good. And I'm actually really, really happy with what, I did, because we were going to do 9, I did get them to press 1 first. And I just said to them, look, I'm just going to get you to do that one. That's the one that I think is the most challenging. And if that one's good, then great, we'll do the rest. And I was actually really happy with it. I went, shit, this sounds better than what I gave you. So
which was the most difficult? I've got them all right here. Which is the most...
I have to, now I don't know. I knew you were going to ask that next.
All right.
Or maybe even it was just that I thought, oh, this one sort of covers the most ground sonically. So if I feel like something is missing,
okay, that was your test. If they do this one right, the rest of them shouldn't be a problem. So okay. At some point, you came to the conclusion that you wanted to do a box set of 9 7-inch records, and each one of them has, different bands on them.
Yeah.
So again, you're collecting tapes, you're getting songs from all over the place, and you're assembling this. What was the aha moment? When was it that whole kind of thought pattern came together, and how did that happen? Hey there, audiophiles. If you're seeking stylish furniture to showcase your stereo and record collection, well, look no further than SidetrackedWorkshop.com. Sidetracked Workshop designs extraordinarily elegant record cabinets and consoles that add sophistication and panache to your music hobby. Handcrafted in the good old USA in the vinyl-loving city of Portland, Oregon, Sidetracked Workshop's designs are a music lover's dream. Made with real walnut veneered wood and brass accents, these gorgeous designs add class and taste to the record room and ship fully assembled and ready to enjoy. Just check out the designs for yourself at SidetrackedWorkshop.com. Look, you spend thousands of dollars on records. Don't keep them in a crate, and don't risk your records on those feeble wooden pegs from IKEA. Your music deserves the dignity of Sidetracked Workshop. That's SidetrackedWorkshop.com. Elegant solutions for the vinyl lifestyle. So, okay, at some point you came to the conclusion that you wanted to do a box set of 9 7-inch records, and each one of them has, different bands on them.
Yeah.
So again, you're collecting tapes, you're getting songs from all over the place, and you're assembling this. What was the aha moment? When was it that whole kind of thought pattern came together, and how did that happen?
Yeah. So I'm going to invoke sort of, a few of my seniors here. I was once listening to an interview with Damien Cowell from TISM, the highly unique Australian band, and he said, everything in TISM started with wouldn't it be funny if, or wouldn't it be fun if? I think he said, wouldn't it be funny? And everything in Dead starts with usually one of us saying to the other, oh, hey, what do you reckon about, or hey, this would be cool. And usually the other person has already been having that thought anyway, to the point that we've dramatically reduced how much we talk to each other, because we've kind of gone, there's not a lot of point, because we just agree with each other, or like we're already having the same thoughts,
Mm-hmm.
So how it happened exactly, I'm not sure, but I think what it was I said something to Jace like, okay, the album that we recorded before Burn Us Clean was Raving Drooling, and that was sort of to me the kind of theme of that record, or the jumping off point, was this is our metal record. Mm-hmm. for whatever that means. Like, I don't really care if people agree with that or not. I just mean that was our starting off point. That's so that album had a degree of kind of aggressiveness to it, maybe that I was very deliberate about putting into it. So then I thought, oh, what if the next one was like more of a pop album, because it's one of those things that I've always found with Dead, is that we do care a lot about melody, and there is a lot of it in our writing, and for some reason people tend not to notice it, and then probably I thought, well, I guess a way of spelling that out, if we were going to write a whole album of pop songs? What if they were all 7 inches? Like, so that's making it really clear that they're like a single.
Right.
And then that probably evolved to, oh, hang on, what if it was, that each song is its own single, but together it's also an album. Like it's for us, it's always about, I think by about album 3, it hit me. I would say in some ways the first 3 albums are kind of not that different from each other. Like they sound different, but what I mean is that they have the same sort of approach, which is they're basically these are the songs that we have right now that we want to record, and we did it. And then after that, I started to think, no, I want them to be a bit more deliberate, because I don't want to put out. I started to realize, I was like, we're going to keep doing this and we're going to do it regularly. So I don't want to put out 20 albums that kind of all have the same sort of approach, like, as maybe a band like AC/DC or Motorhead might. And no shade on them. And I love both those bands. Mm-hmm. But that's not for me. So then that started to make it like this is all then part of the challenge. Like, okay, we don't need to use up all our songs at once. So often now, like one of the songs on that pop on Burn Us Clean, we had already recorded a version of it for Raving Drooling, but we left it off. So that's kind of where it's. So then it just sort of became, okay, what's the challenge here? What can we pull that off? Can we have 9 songs? I think I started with 8 because I was going to do it as 4 7-inches,
right?
And go. And then I went, no, let's do 9 because that can be put together as a square. And then we'll write our own B-sides, and they'll all be totally different. Like, so A-side will be all the pop songs, and B-side will be all maybe just different stuff. I don't know,
right?
Instrumental,
right? Potpourri.
Yeah, and then I have no idea why at some point it turned into splits, but I think it turned into splits just for the reason that you ever do a split record, which is, hey, it would be nice to share, some great music with the people that, that engage with us. So that to me is like sort of the point of a split is,
exposure.
Hey, yeah. And also sort of, I often think of it in the context of course, pre-streaming, you might have bought a split or a compilation record for the fact of, I buy one record, but I get to hear multiple bands.
Mm-hmm.
And that's obviously long gone. But what it now represents to me is in the streaming age, people are so overwhelmed with a constant stream of music being thrown at them that, the split record sort of gives you something solid and says, no, this is the one. Listen to this band. Like, put this record on and spend the next 2 to 3 minutes just listening to that.
Okay, so you get bands, Nunchuck a Superfly or Gay Witch Abortion. You had a list of bands. You're like, these are the bands that I would like to accompany or to be part of this, or how did you settle on those 9? Did you start with 12 and then kind of work your way backwards? Was there someone who you wanted to get that wasn't able to give you something?
Yeah, again, it was a bit of a working out. Okay, I wanted it to deliberately represent people from around the world that we had, played shows with at the very least. So I made a decision early. I was like, look, I'm not going to hit up bands that are sort of, what am I trying to say? Like I thought, look, there are bands that we know that we've worked with that are considerably, have a much, much bigger audience than us. Mm-hmm. But if I do it with them, it's kind of going to be really just us trying to sell a few more copies because of that band. Like, we would probably end up being the band on the other side that a lot of people bought the record but never listened to.
Right. Okay.
So
I'll go on a limb and suggest one of those bands may have been someone like Melvin's that has a very fervent fan base. And I'm not saying you did or not, but that would be an example of a band to where Melvins collectors, myself included, look for anything Melvins and try to get it. And you still want Dead to be the headline.
Yeah, or not the headline, but just more the kind of the equal. Just because my theory is that at that kind of level, I mean, I know it's all a bit kind of weird the way we word that stuff, like, but it just means that I think there's more of a chance that we both lift each other up.
Yeah.
So if you like Nunchucker Superfly, then you clearly don't care about what is cool, and you clearly have a bit of, patience to delve a bit deeper. So I would say that makes you likely to be someone that's going to flip this, record over and listen to it properly. I'd say with a band like the Melvins, it's they've gone really deep into their own territory where and I released a split 7-inch with Hard-Ons and the Melvins, and it actually was kind of bits of that were less fun. It was, a huge honor to put out a record by either of those bands, let alone both. But it also meant that suddenly I was now holding this thing that, like, so many, like that thing again that I went to where there was no way I could be sort of fair, if you will, about, I just had to put it online in batches and watch it sell in seconds. and that actually didn't feel so great, because I one of the things I love about running the label is that I have the time still, like, just to generally engage with people. So people write to me and say, hey, they love the new record, and I get to write back. Whereas when 100 people sent me emails saying, hey, I want that Melvins record and I don't know who they are, I was just like, I actually can't can't respond to all of this.
So and I'm only going to stay on this topic for a little bit, because I know I don't want to absorb all the oxygen, but I do have a copy.
I think all roads lead to Melvins, so it's okay.
It's heavy. This record is, for a 7-inch, it's probably the heavy, like physically heavy.
So that's a 70-gram 7-inch instead. Usually 7 inches are 43 grams,
right?
And the only place I know that does them is GZ in Czech Republic.
Okay,
and I don't know if any others do, and I'm sure at some point it was more normal. But yeah, I really wanted that was a series of 4 split 7 inches that the Hard-Ons asked me to do for their 30th anniversary. Was it 30th? Yeah. And that was a huge honor. I love those guys and I love working with them. And I just really wanted to, I wanted to make them really high quality, and the balance there was, the Hard-Ons, often whenever I've worked with them, Blackie always, he remember, Jem, like, Hard-Ons is value for money. Like, that that's always been really important to them, that they're not sort of, overcharging people, and
right.
And often to their detriment, where you go, come on, guys, like, if you've been a band for this long, your show doesn't need to be this cheap. So that was just, those records do cost a fair bit more to produce, but I wanted to do it that way. So, yeah.
So was that your first box set, the Hard-Ons 30 years? Hey there, all you record nerds. I want to tell you about BagsUnlimited.com. BagsUnlimited.com has a huge selection of vinyl record supplies. Whether you collect LPs, 7-inch singles, 78 shellacs, or anything in between, BagsUnlimited.com will sort you out. From polyline sleeves to cardboard record mailers to 7-inch storage boxes and archive quality record sleeves, protect your records of any size and shape at BagsUnlimited.com. Whether you have a small personal record collection or you're running a massive record shop, you can grab a small supply or even buy in bulk at BagsUnlimited.com. And they've got some really incredible, unique stuff. BagsUnlimited.com even has special size sleeves made especially to protect your box sets, storage boxes and sleeves for cassette tapes, protective supplies for reel-to-reel, and yes, even 8 tracks. Just go to bagsunlimited.com, click on audio supplies, and prepare to be impressed by all the options they have. That's bagsunlimited.com. Well, hey there, record collectors. There's a new service available that specializes in record cleaning, restoring, sticker removal, and professional grading.
VMGvinyl.com.
VMG Vinyl can help you make the most of your collectible records. From professional cleaning of records and sleeves,
Removing old price tags and store stickers.
dry cleaning and rejuvenation of old shrink wrap to make it look like new, even providing you a professional play-tested third-party grade with either removable grading or encasing in plastic. You have a wide range of choices at VMGvinyl.com.
Buying a highly collectible record and you want it checked out by an expert?
VMG Vinyl can do that too. Head over there now and see what VMGvinyl.com can do for you and your collection. That's VMGvinyl.com, the one-stop shop for professional third-party grading, cleaning, and record restoration. That's VMGvinyl.com. So, was that your first box set, the Hard-Ons 30 years?
I don't know. It's funny that I tend to remember things by relationships or houses. And I lived in a house up here in Castlemaine, the first house I lived in up here, for not that long, because the relationship I was in didn't survive the move.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember that in that same house, I produced that box set. I know that because my dad helped me number some of them. He came up because my relationship was ending. He sort of came up and wanted to help.
Come on, son, let's fold some cardboard together.
It was so funny because he's a very, very intelligent man. He's a professor at a university. In fact, both my parents are very, very academically, very, very smart. And then they ended up with 2 kids that didn't get any further than year 12. But at the same time, I know the dead box set version of Captains of Industry was also produced. So I don't know which one came first. But
okay.
But that was out on Rock Is Hell, not my label. So yeah, I would say it was the first box set that my label produced.
Okay. And Hard-Ons, how much guidance did you get about these records? Did they make the deal with Nex and Melvin's, or was that on you? How did that kind of come together?
Yep. Yeah, so they chose the bands. And again, I mean, I can't say enough good things about Blackie and Ray and all of their bands and the way they operate. And I mean, just to go back a little bit, I discovered the Hard-Ons through Nunchucker, not the other way around. So the first time I saw them play was my band at the time, Fire Witch. We were young. We were like 19 or something. We played with them on a Thursday night at the Art House. I still remember it was Nunchucker, Fire Witch, and White Horse. And I think there was about maybe 8 payers. And I watched them encore for half an hour because even though the room was empty, those people that were there wouldn't let them finish.
Right.
And really soon after that, I did a few releases for Nunchucker. And looking back now, I think, geez, that is awesome. Like, you don't realize how young you are when you're that young, but they were really, really trusting of me, and really, like, I put together a live album for them, and it was a good learning experience. I paid for the recording and thinking naively I would make my money back on the CDs. And I didn't, but they were really great about it. And they always have been, whether it's Hard-Ons or Nunchucker, they have a really, really great mix of, they are hands-on, but they are not micromanagers in the slightest. So they know what matters. They get that out of the way, and then they leave the other bits to me. So I honestly now couldn't tell you, even Ray has a better memory. I'm sure it was Ray's idea that there was going to be, 4 different cover artists.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty sure. But maybe he just didn't know who they would all be.
Right.
The
cover of the sleeve, because he did
cover of the sleeves.
He did the one with the necks.
Yeah.
You did the one with Melvin's, right?
Yeah, so that's Jace did that artwork.
Okay.
I have a feeling maybe it's weird, but Ray would remember. But again, they're not precious about they wouldn't have busted my chops about whether it's going to be a 70-gram 7-inch or 43 or anything. And I just I do remember getting the phone call from Ray saying, hey, we want to do 4 split 7 inches to celebrate our 30th anniversary. Do you want to do it? And I said yes immediately. And then he told me the bands who it would be with, and I sort of went, oh, okay, I don't know how to say yes more because I've already said it. And then I do know I said to them, hey, I want to do, can we just do like a box as well? Just because I know that, I'm one of those people that, and I know there's enough people out there that are like that, where it's like, there's a series of things and it can be packaged up. Mm-hmm. That would be good. And my only, it's not a regret, but the only thing that was not ideal about that release is, again, my plan was we'll do the first 300 of each, and then when they've sold out, we'll press more as required. But I could never get a response from Buzz after we did that, and I didn't want to repress it without like having absolute like confirmation from him that that's all cool to go ahead. So then that just meant that Melbourne's one remained fairly hard to get.
Yeah. Okay. 70-gram on a single, and I would imagine that would be better sound quality.
Yeah,
noticeably.
I mean, my understanding, I'm really curious. Like, I'm a little bit reluctant to say too much because I know that there'll be a whole lot of audiophiles listening that will have information that I don't, or will have different opinions or whatever. But from what I've been able to gather is, look, if you're talking about a 180-gram LP or even a 220-gram LP or a 70-gram 7-inch, it's not that the sound of them necessarily would be better. But what is more the case is that they will be flatter. Sometimes particularly with a 7-inch, they're often quite thin, and so that I guess that makes them a little more prone to being like ever so slightly warped.
Right.
And same with an LP, and not just that sometimes they come from the factory that way, but sometimes over time, because they're not as heavy. Whereas that's my understanding, that a 180-gram LP, it's not necessarily that it's going to sound better straight off the bat, but it's going to be flatter, and it's going to stay flatter.
And it could have greater stability. That's probably...
Yeah, but there are so many points along the way, so this is why I never buy the argument that vinyl sounds better than digital or sounds better than CDs or whatever. And the reason is, I mean, without sort of sounding condescending here, like what is music? Like, what's its medium? It's sound, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, what sounds are permissible in music? I would say literally everything. Literally every sound can be used in music. Some people might say, well, the harmonica shouldn't or whatever, but it's all about context.
Mm-hmm.
So, pre-digital, there's some serious limitations when it comes to vinyl, like there are, and people knew that, and they made records based on that. So they knew, okay, we can't have hard panned sub frequencies. We just can't, because the needle will skip. And they knew, well, we can't have more than, this amount of time on a side because we can't fit it, or, they knew things to say, okay, as we get towards the end of that side, let's put the quieter song because there's less fidelity. And then along comes CDs, and I would say that various records have been made that, or albums have been made that probably actually sound better for the CD because that they used that,
Right.
I tend not to, I don't think the music I make tends to fit into that category. Like I am definitely drawn on the whole more towards analog sounds, but in that whole process, so I'll give you another example. There's a record I'm working on right now. It's going to be a 2 LP record, and we recorded it up here in Castlemaine on in a friend's studio. That his studio is 100% analog. He's quite eccentric. So we mixed, we did it the old school way, like the way I did on my very first album, where we recorded onto a 2-inch tape. We didn't use many of the tracks actually, but we used the 2-inch tape.
Okay.
And then we mixed it live onto a 1/4-inch, which, for anyone that's not a nerd, that's just mixing it down to a 2-track.
That's how they used to do it.
Yeah. And that's how it went for a long time. Now, my initial intention was just for the pure experience of it and for the process. There was a pressing plant, there was a cutting engineer in Sydney who was going to make me the lacquers using that 1/4-inch tape. So he had the one of the few left in the world, according to him, that could do that properly.
Right.
Unfortunately, he got really ill and he sold all his equipment, and that option doesn't exist. So we've still done the record, but we will now master it with someone where it did have to go, into a digital format before it got mastered, or before it gets mastered. I haven't mastered it yet.
Right.
Now, all I'm getting at is when I was communicating with that bloke around, okay, can you cut us, a record where it never goes digital, just because that was an experience I wanted. He said, yeah. He said, I can. And he said, just so that a lot of places that will cut you, a lacquer from your 1/4-inch are actually running it into a digital, format first. And he said, I don't do that. I keep it on tape the whole time. And he said the reason that a lot of people don't do that is that means it goes, if you want to go, stay off digital the whole time, you have to make your 1/4-inch mix down, then make a 1/4-inch master, and then that 1/4-inch master goes onto, gets hooked up to the lathe that's going to cut the lacquer, and that lacquer cutter also is receiving that audio and putting it onto a little bit of 1/4-inch tape. So
multiple generations, then you're losing.
You've got a lot of generations in which you can lose, and the really, really great cutting engineers and audio engineers and mastering engineers, of course, that was their job, was making sure that those transfers didn't degrade. But at our level, for a band like us, it makes so much more sense to send a mastering engineer a high resolution digital file, and then to send that high resolution digital to a cutting engineer, and for that cutting engineer to use and just I know I'm going very nerdy here, but I guess that's what this show is.
Absolutely.
Just that little bit of information that often people don't realize is when your cutting engineer is cutting that lacquer, they are not running the original source direct onto that lathe. there needs to be a slight delay. So they're hearing off the source, and I don't know what that delay is. Let's say it's 2 seconds or 3 seconds. And then it goes, it has to be a delay so that they hear that loud bit first and they know, okay, I got to give that, give it a little more space. So it's, right. I guess it's like this, the 7-second delay that exists with broadcasting or something, isn't it? Like, so.
Well, almost like a conductor though, too, but in reverse, where they have to be a bit ahead of the music.
Yeah. Yeah. So they have to know, okay, there was a big low note there. I know that is now going to be cut, a few seconds later. So I need to adjust and give it a little more space.
Well, and just the fact you're thinking this way. And again, it just, I really, really enjoy the music that you guys make and what you put out. But the fact that you do these, you think through and you almost have, I don't want to call them stunt records or anything, but, you give yourself a challenge and a constraint and you test yourself. Can you do this? Can you actually do it? Look, I think the only person that can probably really do an all analog production beginning to end is probably someone like Jack White, and the resources he has. But kudos to you to be able to okay, let's try to do it. And it was only when you got to the super impossible bit and you educated yourself more and you're like, okay, this is really going to be, a fucking problem. And it's not just the logistics of it, but also the details within.
Yeah. And for us, the process part of it was still in that entirely analog space. So that's the bit that for us, as far as how's it going to affect our record, that bit, we got to do in that way.
Right.
And again, it's not that one is better than the other. It's more about, I believe that every format and every environment, every sort of arrangement, it's going to have an effect. And, a lot of bands, it's really interesting because a lot of bands that I, look up to and stuff, a lot of them say, that stuff doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what room you're in or whatever. But for me, I actually do really notice it. Mm-hmm. And it's at many levels. It's that, if you record in a space where you are getting a really good sound, the room and the headphones and all that, then you play differently than if you're getting a terrible sound, but the engineer is saying, don't worry, it'll sound good later. If you're looking at a screen while you're mixing, it's a different feeling to when you're doing it analog and there's no screen. So you have to do everything just using your ears. And again, they all have there are things that we can do digitally that are, you'd be pulling your hair out trying to recreate it in the analog space. And there are things that when you record to tape, just kind of, they happen.
Right.
And you couldn't, it'd be foolish really to try and recreate that same thing digitally sometimes, because sometimes it's just little things like just overdriving the tape or something, like overloading it and go, oh, yeah, that sounds cool. Or sometimes the tape crapping out, because you used up that last bit of tape. And you just go, that was fun, like that sounds great, leave it in there.
So that's a double album that's coming out. You guys haven't announced this yet, so
no, but feel free to include, we don't have management or anything that's going to tell us, hey, you shouldn't. Yeah, it'll come out. It'll come out when it comes out, because honestly, my problem with us, I literally just before I logged on here, just paid the deposit for a different album as well, that will be pressed in the States.
Wow. Okay.
So my biggest problem is just, how do I space out this stuff enough so that I'm not, gonna make myself go broke because we do find that once you release a new album, that's the one that everyone starts to buy.
So with this Burn Us Clean, again, there's a couple of 7-inch packages. When you think about this 9-record box set, and forgive me if I just keep talking about this because it's such an ambitious project. It's like, holy fuck. So you made the decision, okay, we're doing 9 records, and no one stopped you. You said, I'm doing 9 records. I'm going to, and I've got all these other bands I'm going to put as the B-sides. You collect all that music. Was that difficult? Was that difficult finding those 9 bands? Or
Hey there, I gotta tell you about the Groove Washer. Not because I have to, but because I want to. The Groove Washer is the best record cleaner you can get. And if you have a vinyl collection, you need to keep it clean. Dirt and dust lead to groove wear, which affects the sound and value of your record collection. Use the Groove Washer to clean before each play, and your ears and future pocketbook will thank you. Ask for the Groove Washer by name at your local record store, or go direct to groovewasher.com and use promo code VinylGuide10 at checkout. Groove Washer is a great holiday gift. Why not send one to a friend? groovewasher.com, discount code VinylGuide10. Do it now.
when you think about this 9-record box set, and forgive me if I just keep talking about this because it's such an ambitious project. It's like, holy fuck. So you made the decision, okay, we're doing 9 records, and no one stopped you. You said, I'm doing 9 records. I'm going to, and I've got all these other bands I'm going to put as the B-sides. You collect all that music. Was that difficult? Was that difficult finding those 9 bands? Or
it was difficult to collect it all. And I have to, at this point, say a really, really big thank you to the bands on the B-side for their patience, because basically we recorded this album fairly close to before the pandemic, like maybe 6 months or something. But we recorded it late in the
2019?
mid the year before the pandemic. So yes,
right.
Somewhere. And then that was the plan, and all right, let's go full steam ahead. And then the pandemic hit, and it put the brakes on things a bit in various ways, which I actually can't remember now exactly, but it did mean that we couldn't quite finish it because we basically recorded it all, but there was just a little bit that we needed to add.
Mm-hmm.
And then what also happened was during all that time, everything just felt really dark and a bit shit, and people were dying that we loved, and it didn't feel like time for the pop record. And also we couldn't tour, so we canceled a lot of shows. I'd booked an album tour for the album Raving Drooling. I'd booked a tour in the States and in Australia, and we had to cancel all of it. So long story short, meant that during all that, we just ended up hunkering down and writing The Laughing Shadow, which was like, a singular piece. I mean, it's made up of other pieces, but we envisioned it as a whole, like performance and from start to finish. So we focused on that more. And what happened in the middle of all that was some bands got me stuff really early, and other bands took a while. And then I started taking a while and just generally kind of struggling to keep up with it all.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another reason why I'm glad we worked with, another rule I had was like, they have to be people that we know personally and we know that we get along, because I just don't want there to be any hassles around someone then complaining that, the deal wasn't fair, or, so they're all bands that understood, look, you're never going to get squillions of dollars out of a project like this. And then we just sort of started working through them. And I have to apologize that some bands got in really early, but they were all very understanding that it took a while.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a couple of bands that, again, because of COVID and stuff, I guess really couldn't give us something. And that was a shame, but also it made me realize, good Lord, like we could do 30 of these and we would not run out of bands. Like no way.
Was
So,
there an understanding that this was going to be kind of, you wanted exclusive tracks? For example, Nunchuck a Superfly, Chimney Sweep. Is that somewhere else, or is this the only place they can get it?
so for everyone, it's the only place that it exists on vinyl.
Mm-hmm.
For the House of Lightning track that exists on like their album, but that album only ever came out digitally. Like
Okay.
it didn't come out on any physical format. So yeah, that was definitely a part of it where I said, obviously for one reason of going, it's a hell of a lot easier to sell something that is new. But also that, yeah, again, I love vinyl. I love, I think there's a lot of value in a physical format, but I also respect, that we have finite resources and stuff like that.
Sure.
So it's finding that balance and going, I want to make sure a record is, that it's worth buying that record. So basically the others, it's up to the bands, obviously, that they might end up releasing them in another way down the track. But they are all exclusive, if you will.
Were you any what sort of guidance, or did you do any quality control? Like one band sent in a track, and you're like, what else you got? And was there any of that?
No, I told everyone our side is going to be a pop song for in our definition anyway. But I was very clear. I said yours doesn't need to be. I'm just giving you that information. Like, but I suppose it was more like, obviously, just it's got to be something that can fit on a 7-inch.
Okay, yeah, something under 4.5 minutes or whatever.
Yeah, but I've always, I'm definitely better than I used to be. I did used to sort of struggle not to, meddle with things a bit when I was younger. But on the whole, that's only with my own stuff, like my own bands. So I've always been pretty clear about, if I'm working with a band, it's because I like them and they do their thing. Like I never said to Nunchucker, okay, these are the songs that we're going to record for the live album. I just said, this is where we can do it. Are you happy with that? And left it to them. And that's the same. Yeah, I would never, tell a band, oh, can we release this but with a different song?
Right. Knowing how much effort this took, this is the most ambitious box set the most ambitious musical project you've taken up to date. Would that be fair?
Yeah, I think it would be. Yeah, as far as a physical release, for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Is this something you're keen to do again? I mean, even on a more grandiose scale, or you thinking, all right, top of the mountain for me on this?
It's hard to know. Again, before we got onto Zoom here, I got a text from Ray from Hard-Ons. And he summed it up very well. He just said, hey, this 7-inch is great. But he says, ridiculous release that only brave artists like you would do on an indie level. And I love the fact that it's like, that's where we're at the moment now, where people, if they know us, they know that we're not, in a way, it's almost like our different version of like what Kiss did. Like how the way they just pretended they were big, even though they weren't. Like they sort of did things like, have an album cover where it looks like there's a big crowd or something, but there actually was no crowd. Or our sort of ethos has always been, let's try and I guess punch above our weight. Like let's do those as much as we can. Let's do those cool things that bands that we love did or still do. And usually, like I would say, when I was about 2/3 of the way through printing all these fucking record sleeves, like it was a lot.
Each one's hand done. Each one's
they're all hand done, and
two
and
sides.
you know,
Fuck.
yeah. And I just went, I don't want to do this again. Like a part of me sort of broke, and then literally as I was finishing maybe the last, when I knew I was on like my last 50, I just got happy again, and I started thinking about this double LP that I'm going to do later in the year, and getting excited by that. So it's, like I said again, I'm not ever trying to go, oh, what's the most grandiose thing we can do? It's sort of like, what's the most appropriate thing? So
is there any idea that you started with that you had to abandon halfway through?
I'm thinking of two that we did not abandon, but we definitely underestimated the labor. Mm-hmm. So in my old band, Firewitch, like my high school band, our second release, which was actually, another thing, it was the first release under the record label name. So I had already been releasing music for a while, and I just thought record labels must have a secret thing. Like, I was like, surely, I didn't know what they had. And then eventually I realized, actually, once you start releasing records, you can just, call that a label. So, and the reason I did that originally was I thought, I mean, I know this is pretty obvious, but when you're a kid, it takes you a while to click. I thought, I guess if we put a label name to it, maybe people will start to pay attention to, the other stuff. So the reason it was We Empty Rooms, by the way, was the whole point was it was supposed to be a bit of a kind of collective, like different friends could release music under that name.
Right.
But that never happened, because I also learned very quickly that people just want you to do all the work. But yeah, the first two releases we did for Firewitch were a 3-inch CDR in an origami box. And it was Claire was one of our girlfriends, Pato's girlfriend. She was the only one that could do them. And I've probably never thanked her enough for folding up 100 origami boxes. And then the next one that we did was like a book, right, that we made. So we had a friend that sort of showed us, she was like, hey, you can basically make a book in a sort of accordion fashion. Yeah.
Right.
So we screen printed, again, this is the stupid stuff we do. It's like, oh, we won't just use cheap paper. Like, I went and bought, artist, archival grade paper, screen printed that, cut them all up using Stanley knives, and then had to fold up my own little bits for the CD to sit in. And then we bought lino, like Laminex tiles, and cut them to square to be the cover. And then we were like, oh, but now the corners are a bit pointy. So then we hand sanded every corner so that it was rounded off. And yeah.
So 4 corners across 100 copies. Oh, because front and back. Okay.
Yeah, the front and back. Yeah. So those 800 of them. And
but you completed it. You finished it.
We completed it, and it's also, I don't regret that at all. Like, that was a different time as well. Like, that was when Aquarius Records was still a thing, and they bought 30 copies straight up of each one.
Mm-hmm.
And a part of me really misses, not in a nostalgic way, but that era, which in retrospect was fairly short-lived, in which CD was still the sort of main medium. Mm-hmm. Actually was a lot less risky cost-wise, as far as doing DIY releases.
Right.
And I do actually often say to Jace, like again, going back to the music is the most important thing. I often say to Jace, hey, I don't know, maybe this will be the last record we do. I don't know, because I never feel confident that this vinyl thing will, I don't want to take it for granted that it will just stay, as popular as it is. And if tomorrow we had to say, no, we can't do vinyl anymore, I would be okay with it. I would miss it, but we can always do something else. We can make a zine, or we can make cool art prints, or like there's other stuff we can do. But I do the vinyl records because we have a following, which we've worked really hard on, and they it blows my mind that there's that really, I mean, I sort of feel bad sometimes. If you're a dead fan, that means you're probably going to be buying a couple of records a year just from us. But also I feel like it lends this kind of legitimacy, again, going back to in this streaming age where literally, if I wanted to, I could record just any old nonsense into a dictaphone right now, or just straight onto my computer, I guess. And I could put it on Spotify tonight if I wanted to. So I guess making the physical stuff just lends it just puts it in a context, like sort of like, even if you're not listening to the vinyl, which I still do, I listen to vinyl records fairly regularly. But if I put, like, I listened to Black Sabbath Volume 4 today, I know that exists. I just listened to it digitally, there's something about knowing that it was a record, that someone went through that whole process,
right,
which is a process and takes up a lot of energy. So, it's, to me, it sort of says, yep, okay, someone cared enough. Okay, I'm going to give it my time now.
There's a permanence, and there's a craftsmanship to it that I think it actually goes quite well. And again, I really enjoy the music. It's right up my alley. Just the heaviness, especially Laughing Shadow and Up Yours and Raving and Drooling. I'm just gonna start naming records, but the care that goes into it and the deliberateness of it, I think, is very, I guess, poignant for me. And the fact that it's kind of like an interesting secret. It's something that I can share and talk about and reveal to others. Those records, we did a Laughing Shadow version of 10. For the Vinyl Guide, and I took those and I sent them just to specific friends around the world, and because I'm sure that it's new to them, and I'm sure that they would be discovering it. It's one thing when you go up to someone and say, "Hey, have you heard this?" "Oh, yes, I've heard that." It's almost anticlimactic, right? But if you not only refer someone, but you hand them this physical object that's special, and allow them to spend some time with it, that's really kind of the human experience to me. We're here, I think, to repopulate and to make art. Everything else is just in service of those two things.
Yeah. No, I like that. Yeah. And and it's a great way to be able to share, like I remember one time in primary school, a friend for my birthday made me a tape of a Violent Femmes album. What a cool thing to do. Like, he just sat there by the tape machine and played the CD into the tape, but he hand wrote the track listing and sort of included the credits, I'm pretty sure.
Oh.
And even this bit I really remember clearly is, so he obviously had the CD and he sacrificed the little sticker that says like explicit lyrics,
right?
Like parental advisory. Like, he removed that and gave that to me, like on my version, because those things were like, they're a badge of honor when you're in primary school, like explicit lyrics. But I actually sort of I don't particularly like Violent Femmes, but I can't hear that music without having all those memories,
right.
Now. And I just think what a great, like, that we both knew this thing, this thing called music, like it's valuable, and he knew that I'd, get something out of it, and, you had to put some effort in. Yeah, and I think we never want to create scarcity. Like we do not manufacture scarcity. I really pride myself on going, our stuff will be special, and it will be special if you got it, but it's also not going to be sitting there on Discogs for 6 times the price. Like we always have that power that if that ever happened, because we do it ourselves, we can just reflood the market if we wanted to.
Right.
I sort of want to keep it, special, but not just about what's it worth money-wise, which is good because we're not generally worth a lot money-wise.
Yeah. Well, you also don't want to get stuck with a basement full of records either. Well, look, you know what, Jim, I really appreciate you spending time with us here, and I've always wanted to have you on the show because, again, I think the catalog that you guys have and the work that you do is really just fucking super cool. And it's admirable, and I think it strikes at it pulls at the strings of the spirit that I think music and art really is most foundational to that, right? The physical form, I think, is very important. I don't give a shit about streaming. It's, and digital. It really, to me, I have my theories on why I think records are a better experience, but a lot of it is emotional. A lot of it is, psychosomatic. But being able to hold a record in my hands, I think, is what I strive for. And when you guys come out with something like this 9-disc package, it gives me faith in humanity that people are still kind of doing these things for art's sake. No one's getting rich off this. You're putting these things out in the universe, and with the goal of bringing enjoyment and to others and exposing us to new music. I know Nunchuck a Superfly. I actually entered similar to you. I started with, my journey with Nunchuck a Superfly, and then worked into Hard-Ons. But some of the other artists, Skullfork and Mo, I wasn't familiar with them until now, and it's also now set me on a journey to kind of discover them. So it's fulfilling its purpose.
Awesome,
but, man. Anytime you come back, anytime you've got an interesting project and you want to let the record nerd world know about it, just hit me up, ping me, and we'll talk about it, because I'm sure whatever you get into is going to be interesting and worthy of discussion.
Excellent. I can't overstate how much I while we're here giving each other praise, like I love this show. I really do. And I love talking about what I do, partly because I feel like it's almost like a good therapy, but also I just love engaging with the whole community, like in the fact that, bands don't exist in a vacuum. We exist as part of this community where there are people making podcasts and people filming stuff and people making artwork and all of that. Mm-hmm. And I just think that the whole thing is better when we're able to, share conversations with each other. So, yeah, I love it.
Oh, man, I'm so glad we finally were able to get Jem on the show. Again, we only scratched the surface. We Empty Rooms has a bunch of other stuff as well. I highly recommend following them. deadsounds.bandcamp.com. I think We Empty Rooms may have a Bandcamp as well. Find that and follow that as well. And also, just a quick reminder, we've got an extended version of this interview, the conversation with Jem, about another 20, 25 minutes, only for show patrons. Patreon.com/Vinyl Guide. Head up there now, help support the show, and get all the extras. And that's it for this episode of the Vinyl Guide. Thank you all for downloading and listening and spending some time with us. Really appreciate everyone who's been sharing these podcasts on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. putting them in Reddit forums or Facebook groups. That's hugely appreciated. And a big thanks and shout out to everyone who's been leaving positive reviews on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and every other platform. That is huge. Thank you so much, everyone. We'll be back shortly with a brand new episode. So until we talk next time, get out there and buy some records, people. Cheers.